I'm going to show you how to do some parallax effect with images in Elementor without any extra plugins, CSS code, JavaScripting, anything like that. You can all do it within Elementor. A bit of homework is required with images, but I'm going to show you how to do that right now. The first place you want to go to is your graphical tool of choice. Photoshop, Photopea, GIMP, loads of places. I'm using Canva, and this image that you see here is literally me playing around with tons and tons of pieces. It took me about an hour to create this. It's just lots and lots of different shapes. And if you don't believe me, watch this. See this bear over here? Look, it's a bit of an image and a bear's face. We've got a deer, we got some birds. These mountains are just bits and pieces I've cobbled together to just create this picture however I wanted to. Let's just undo all of that. Ding, 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 ding. And what I did was I layered them all together to be a certain like silhouette style. Now, you will notice the color scheme for this, and it was good to pick a range of colors that kind of went well together. Your background is always your lightest, and your foreground is always your darkest when you're trying to create that silhouette horizon effect, which works really well on Parallax. By the way, you can do this with normal images like products, trainers flying around and stuff like that. For your color scheme, I went to coolers.co, and this is a great place, and I picked this color scheme here. And you can see how it's been applied to the colors here. Okay, so I picked a color scheme. By the way, coolers.co, if you go over to it and go to explore palettes, it's going to give you a range of palettes. And here's the one I used over here. What I love about this tool, though, is that if I was to go over here and click, it's literally copied it to my clipboard. So when I can now go into Elementor or Canvas or anywhere, I can drop the hex code in. So it's really, really cool and versatile. But hey, there you go. You use what you want to use. So I've got this image. Once I had styled the image to be how I want, I then duplicated the image about 6 or 7 times. And I removed bits and pieces. So slide 1 is a transparent background with nothing but the sun. Slide 2 is the bird. Slide 3 is the clouds. You can see the clouds here. They're white, which is why you can't really see them. Transparent background. We have mountain range 1, mountain range 2. And in a separate canvas, I created a bigger height image for the one with the deer and the bear, because I wanted to have more of this dark undergrowth or base as it was. Now, I will say though, some tips, just so you know about your images. Even though these background images here for the mountain range are kind of hidden by the foreground or the next layer ahead, ensure that when you create them, you've gone all the way to the bottom. Because when you have overlaps and you have horizontal scrolling effects going on with the parallax, there is a chance that as you get bigger size screens, it might move, and you'll see that if you haven't gone all the way to the bottom, you'll see a gap appear. And it can really break the effect you're trying to go for. So bear that in mind. Second thing, decide on your canvas size. So if you're going to go for a full screen, you might do 1920 by 1080, or even a bigger height size. It's up to you what you want to go for. I went for 1920 by 750 because my parallax effect is mainly going to be close to about 3/4 of the size of the screen, roughly-ish. But the last image is actually going to be really, really big. So this is how big the original image was. You can see that blue line there. After that, that's just extra estate, so it helps to blend with the next section below. This will make sense, okay? So with your images, Canva, great tool. The great thing about Canva is the picture of the deer and all of that is just available within their elements. You pick what you want, you fine tune it, and you go away and play with it. If you want to do freehand drawings, there is now a new draw beta tool as well that's now available. So if I just pick this and pick a purple color, you can literally now start to do freehand drawings as well, but we're not doing that here. So let's get on to Elementor, okay? And I wanted to make sure you understood where the images came from. Who knows, maybe I might start saying to people, hey, do you want to commission me to do an image or an illustration for you? And I might do that, but you can do it yourself. Make sure they're transparent backgrounds, and all of those images, I put them through bulk resize photos to basically compress and optimize them down to WebP format. And all of those images, the total size was 320 kilobytes. Total. So some of these images are like 12 kilobytes. They are tiny and small. Okay, right. Now let's get into Elementor. We have a blank page. I'm going to add in a section that section will contain the background color that we have here. Okay, so I'm going to add that as a background color, and then everything else is a layer in front of it. Stay with me. Let's add in our section. I'm going to make it a full width. I'm going to have no gap in the columns gap. The height I'm going to make fit to screen. So even though the parallax effect is kind of like the top 3/4 of it, I still want it to fit to screen so you don't lose the effect. The column position I'm going to make as a top, okay? Don't worry about that at the moment. You can leave it as middle as well if you want. And I'm not going to touch anything else here. I'm now going to go to Style. For the background color though, I am going to pick the color, okay? Which was this. So I'm going to copy that, go back to my section and add that in. Obviously you would have picked this as your global color. I'm just doing it on the fly. So I've got my background color and now I'm going to add in an image. Let's add in our sun. And I'm going to make this center. I'm going to make this be a fixed. I'm going to say no repeat and I'm going to say cover like that. There you go. And so some people don't realize this, but you can add an image and still have a background color. What was the point of doing that? Well, if I ever then decide, actually, I'm going to change the background color, I can do on the fly. I don't have to change my images. Now, there is no need to add any motion effects to the section, because if you add anything to the section, it will affect everything else. So we don't add anything else more to it. Literally, this is all it was, okay? We have a full width, no gap, fit to screen. I gave it a background color, and then I put my image in. Okay, that's it. Now we're going to drop in some images. So let's drop in image 1. For image 1, we're going to pick the clouds. And I'm going to set this to be full. And you don't have to do this, but I'm going to put the width and the maximum width to be 100% because I want it to always be filling the full width of the screen. It normally does this by default, but you might want to set it up. I'm then going to go to advanced and I'm going to give this, I'm not going to give this a Z index or anything at the moment. I'm going to go down to, where is it? There we go, positioning. And in positioning, you go to the position setting, okay? And I'm going to make this absolute. If you make it fixed, it will be fixed in that position no matter where you are on the website, which is okay as long as every other section has a higher Z index, but it could be problematic at some point. If you make it absolute, it is kind of fixed in place, but it's absolute to the section. So when you move on to section 2, it now won't be present there because it was only relevant for section 1, the one we're working on at the moment. Now, if you can see the clouds, they are highlighting right over the sun, and I want it to be halfway down. I'm going to double check this though by just getting rid of the edit so I can see my full screen. Key, important, when you're looking in editor, always get rid of it by hitting the chevrons to get the full picture. It's still kind of covering over the sun. So I'm going to add in a bit of a motion effect first, and then I'm going to adjust the positioning of this. First thing I'm going to do is go to motion effects, and I'm going to put a scrolling effect in. And I'm going to have a vertical. So as you're going up and down, I want the clouds to move down as you scroll down a bit. I'm going to stick down, and I'm going to set this to be about 8. Now, as soon as I do that, can you see the clouds have gone way below the sun now? In fact, if I do this, it's literally just on the cusp of the sun, which isn't what I want. I need it to be higher up. Don't worry, that's easy to do. Now that I've done the motion effect, I go to positioning, go back to where I've got absolute, and where you have the vertical orientation offset, I'm going to do a negative. I'm going to go to about 115. And you're probably saying, well, it's still not over half the sun. That's because we're still in the edit mode. So when I do this now, that's now looking a lot better. It's not completely halfway, but it's a lot better there. Cool, I'm okay with that. It helps if you've got Navigator open as well, by the way. So I'm just going to name this image here and call it cloud. And I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to duplicate again. In fact, I'm going to duplicate multiple times here. I'm going to call this one mountain 1. I'm going to call this one mountain 2. This one I'm going to call bird. And you might be thinking, why is the bird so far ahead? It's just because of the effect I'm trying to go for. Then over here, I'm just going to call this mountain 3, which is almost like the foreground in effect. So mountain 1, we go over and we pick mountain 1. This is it here. Now mountain 1 has gone behind the cloud, so I'm just going to go over to the Z index and just give it a Z index of 2, just to bring it to the front, okay? And I'm now just going to double check the settings for this. So, by the way, this is already going to be full. It's already going to be 100% because you've duplicated the image before, right? I'm then going to go to motion effect. This has the vertical scroll and it's got 8 at the moment. I'm going to drop this down to be 6. So one of the things I've learned is that your image that's right at the back needs to have the highest vertical scroll number. It doesn't have to be 8 or 10. It could be 15, 20, whatever you want. It'll just have a huge effect. And as you move slowly to the foreground, I want to slow it down. Otherwise, if you speed it up, it will kind of go like that. It won't look right. But if you slow it down, as you scroll down, the things that are furthest away move more. And as you get closer, they move slower, which is actually what kind of happens when you're running towards like a mountain or a hill, the horizon effect, okay? So we're going to put that down to 6. Now for mountain 1, I've got rid of the vertical orientation. I've put it back to 0. Right, let's go to mountain 2. Let's now add in the second mountain, okay? And again, it's got all of the styling applied. We go to advanced, we go to motion effect. And I'm now going to drop this one down to be about 4. So I've gone 6, 4, 2. Okay, I'm going to put the Z index for this one to be a 3. So we've got mountain range 1 was a Z index of 2. Mountain range 2 is a Z index of 3. Now you will notice that mountain range 2 has completely jumped in front of mountain range 1. Don't worry about that because we copied, remember. Go down to positioning. And I'm just going to get rid of the vertical offset there, the orientation. So it's only applied for the cloud, but now we have the mountain effect. Right, let's now do the bird. Click the image, pick the birds, and insert that. Now this one is going to be a little bit different to everything we've done so far. When I set the vertical orientation for the birds to be 0 now, they're kind of positioned over there. And I know I'm going to have to adjust it, but I'm going to do that after I've messed around with the motion effect. So I go to motion effect, and this has got a vertical scroll of 8. I'm going to change this to be about 7, okay? So I'm kind of doing something slightly different to what I did with the mountains. You would play around to get the effect you want. I'm also going to do a horizontal effect to the left, and I'm going to leave it as 4 for now. Now the idea is that as you scroll up and down, not only does it move down, but it also moves to the left. So what happens is as you're scrolling, the birds are kind of flying. They're not flapping their wings, but they are flying across the screen. So let's now put in the big picture of the deer and the bear. Remember, this is slightly different image. It's got, whereas all the others were 750 in height, this one was 1,500 in height. It's still only 34 kilobytes in size. Okay, so don't anyone go, what? How big's that? It's actually still a decent size. Let's insert that. Now, as soon as we add that, you can see what's going on now. It's gone right to the back again. Let's go to advanced. Let's give this a Z index of 5. It's now pushed out all the way to the front. Let's go to positioning. I'm just going to get rid of that vertical orientation again. And now we start to have our image take place. Now then, this is not going to scroll down like the other images. This is going to scroll up, because I'm trying to get that hill horizon effect. So I go to vertical scroll and I'm going to flip this to be up. 8 is way too high. Just put it down to 2. So we get a bit of a gradual effect going on there. Okay, it's not in your face like boom, whooshing up, but you will see it, but it's now going in the opposite direction. Now to double check the positioning of everything, it's a good idea to now get your second section put into place. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to add in another section. This section, the background color for it is going to basically match the foreground of the deer and the bear. So let's go to background type. Let's pick our color, copy, go back over to our page, and we're going to stick it in there. Now at the moment, that's not really filling anything up because there's no content in there. So just for the sake of it, I'm going to make this section be let's go with full width, no gap. And I'm just going to say fit to screen, okay, just so we get an ongoing effect going on there. So just to cover off again, section 1 had our background and the image was the sun. Then we added in our images, okay. We gave them some vertical scrolling effects. We adjusted some of their Z index if we had to. And we also made sure they were all absolute in terms of positioning. And for the clouds, we adjusted it a little bit. And I might need to adjust it a little bit more. But let's just see what it looks like if I just take off the navigator when I take away the chevrons. So there we have our image. There was a bit of a jump there, but that's just because of when you take away the edit chevron bit. So there we have our background. Now watch what happens as I scroll up and down. The birds are moving. The clouds, they're moving. The mountain range, look at that. Mountain range 1, 2, and then we have the deer and the bear. Can you see what's going on there? We have movement. And you might say, well, they all look like they're going up. Actually, no, it's just the way our eyes work. But we now have a lovely effect. But we can now take this a stage further. So let us do that. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to drop in a header. I'm just going to drop it in anywhere for now. I'm going to center it. And I'm going to call this Parallax, like that, okay? And I'm going to make this be a white font. I've gone with Lato, I've gone with a 900 weight. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger like that. We'll go with about 80. You know, you would obviously use REM. I'm just doing this really quickly. I'm going to space out the lettering as well, just a little bit like that. I think this could do with some text stroke. I don't know about you, but I think it definitely could do with just a tiny bit of text stroke there. I'm going to go with a 0.5 and I'm going to give it that same color, the blue color I had before. So it's just noticeable like that. You could make it transparent. You could do whatever you want with it. With the header, there will be no scrolling effect. All we've got to do is make sure that we've got the Z indexing right on the images and the wording. And we're also going to make it a fixed position, not absolute. So fixed means it's always going to be present there as you scroll up and down, and then the layers will go ahead of it. Please bear in mind though, every other section you now do, you've got to make sure that if you've given your header a Z index of 4, make sure that every other section you now do has a Z index of 5, okay, or more, or whatever you want to do. Because if you don't, if your Z index was 1 or 2 for say section 5, eventually the header will appear that says Parallax. So bear that in mind, okay? Let's go back to our header, and we have now, I think I've already done it, so we've already got the fixed, but it's at the minute rooted to the top. I'm just going to drop it down to be somewhere about here. I've just got to double check how that looks. Yeah, that's okay, we've got the birds flying across it. So now watch what happens as I scroll up and down, okay? The birds are in front of the wording. As we scroll down and we get everything else moving, okay, the wording is in front of the mountain range, and then when we get to the foreground, it disappears behind. So we have now got this almost parallax effect. I mean, you could even cut it so that it gets hidden by mountain range 2. You know, you can play around with it. You can have a spaceship flying across the screen, whatever you want. And then when you get down here, or when you get to section 2, I mean, you might be thinking, well, that's a large bit of empty space, isn't it? You could now just go to section 2, right? Section 2, here we go. Go to layout, set this to be a top, for instance, and I'm now just going to drop into here a header. The header there has no margin applied to it. It now sits below, and you might say, well, that's a bit abrupt in the way it appears. And you could just go in and say, right, this particular header, we will have a motion effect. We might say something like scrolling effect, and we'll say transparency, and we say fade in. So as you're coming in, it then fades in. Now you will notice the birds, currently their Z index is a little bit off. That's got a Z index of 6, sorry, so I'm going to stick it to a 4. In fact, let me get this right, 5, there we go. There you go, yeah, that's fine now. So the Z index for the birds was a little bit off. But now, when we view all of this over here, okay, you've got your parallax effect. You're scrolling down, right? The words for section 2 are not present at the moment, and then they appear into view. And then you could have your other content for section 2 now be visible behind there. But that is one way of doing parallax effects without using an extra plugin, CSS code, or Z indexing. Yeah, you got to look at your motion effects. Yes, you got to look at your absolute positioning, and you might need to do some vertical offset orientation, but it can be done. Now, what happens though when you get to mobile? Because I bet you're going, wow, you know, this is all really easy. But when you get to mobile, you are going to hit this problem. What I would say you do is you start on basics, right? So where I did section 1, I added in the clouds. You would go to mobile and you would adjust it. You would just start to play around. So you have a mobile setting here. So you can make it work. You might actually ultimately say, actually, you know, we'll have it for the desktop, and for the mobile, we'll just have like the image like that or something like that. And you might have just one effect that's happening on it. But if you take the time and you work through it methodically. Okay, so you do your cloud, then check what it is like in tablet and mobile, then do the next image, check it tablet, mobile. You know, you keep doing that, you can get this to work. But hey, no plugin, no JavaScript, no CSS. It works, it does what it needs to. I hope you like, subscribe, share, and follow. And like I said, Canva, if you want to get your images, Kulas to get your color palettes or anywhere else you want to get it. But you've got images here galore that you can play around with and, you know, pull things over like, hello, let's have this deer here. You know, but you can play around and color them and stuff like that. Okay, so have a bit of fun and I hope you enjoy yourselves.